Right now, NATO is striking at Russia, and the alliance is taking aim across the Baltic Sea, Kaliningrad, the Achilles heel of the Russian Federation. Russian propaganda is already in hysteria, in shock, while Zaluzhny is tearing up the media space. The Iron General is returning, and this has set the world on edge. Europe is fighting for Ukraine to the very end. Scholz and Macron have come down hard on Trump. There is a catastrophe in Russia. Sanctions are crippling Putin's economy. The Kremlin no longer knows where to run. A new super rocket for Ukraine. The Czechs are plunging into the war against Russia. A strike deep into Russia is guaranteed. Western weapons are already on the launch pad and ready to crush the enemy. A sensation. Kadyrov has been challenged to a showdown and is awaited in Ukraine. The Ukrainian armed forces are destroying the enemy along the entire front line. The new line of defense has shocked the occupiers. All this and more in our upcoming report. A hellish hotspot. Shock. The West is putting pressure on the Kremlin. Kaliningrad is being cut off from vital resources. NATO is showing where Russia is powerless. Kaliningrad is the epicenter of a future strike. Putin is in a panic. NATO is advancing. The plan to destroy the myth of a great Russia has already been approved. The alliance knows how to break the Kremlin without firing a single shot. The West is preparing to strike at Russia's vulnerable points. Watch about this right now.
Starting point. The war between Russia and NATO will begin with the Kaliningrad.
This particular geographical area, often characterized by its unique features and distinct boundaries, is known as a region.
The Kremlin is preparing new provocations. The Russian
Federation is moving towards a deliberate escalation of the conflict.
The alliance has declared its readiness to strike Kaliningrad. The Kaliningrad region is the westernmost region of the Russian Federation and an exclave. It is completely separated from the main territory of Russia by other countries. The Russians have effectively turned the Kaliningrad region into a military base. The main formations include ground forces, aviation, as well as the largest naval base of the Baltic.
A fleet, in its essence, refers to a large group of vehicles, vessels, or aircraft operating together. And in my opinion, it is precisely the Kaliningrad region and the possibility of direct confrontation with the NATO bloc. The Russian Federation is trying to divert the attention of the United States from the Ukrainian issue, or it is creating a precedent for a so-called exchange.
Kaliningrad very often becomes the center of Russian saber-rattling. In this way, Putin is testing the waters, possibly with NATO. For example, during joint exercises with Belarus, West 20 to 25. The military practiced combat operations in the Kaliningrad region, after which the Kremlin transferred the Iskander there, which posed a threat to six.
S-400 advanced surface-to-air missile systems and other formidable active defense arsenals of the currently occupying country's army. In other words, the Kaliningrad region is currently being militarized.
At the same time, Russian propaganda continues its campaign of spreading disinformation about NATO countries preparing to attack Russia.
This concerns the possibility of sanctions from EU countries at this moment, including a blockade of Russian exclaves, the Kaliningrad region. And the Russian Federation claims that such a decision by EU countries creates a precedent for the possible use of military force to lift this blockade. The Russian Federation makes it clear that, accordingly, the possibility of the EU imposing economic sanctions during the blockade of the Russian exclave will be regarded by the Russian Federation as the creation of a casus belli, that is, grounds for the use of military force by the Russian Federation.
Back in July, NATO allies announced that they had developed a plan to neutralize the Kaliningrad region, aimed at countering threats from Russia and ensuring global deterrence.
NATO countries are conducting preventive measures to strengthen their defense structure, the capabilities of these countries, and consequently, the reduced likelihood of a direct invasion of Polish and Lithuanian territory. This includes the redeployment of additional military contingents, conducting joint exercises involving land, sea, and air components, and accordingly developing plans for the potential blockade of the Kaliningrad region.
Russia is interested in seeing divisions within the alliance. It needs division and the undermining of unity in order to create a serious crisis within NATO. But it's unlikely they'll succeed.
Explosive news. Zaluzhny burst in like a whirlwind. The triumphant return of the general. How the commander-in-chief unmasks the truth and says what others have kept silent about. The system might not withstand it. Western weapons won't save us, the collapse of Russia or the end of Ukraine. We are on the verge of decisive changes. All the details coming up. In the report,
the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine and now ambassador to the United Kingdom, Valery Zaluzhny, has likely returned to Ukraine. He hinted at this on his Facebook page. The commander-in-chief posted a photo with his wife Olena with the concise caption, "There's no place like home." And soon after, an article authored by Zaluzhny about Ukraine's possible military strategy for next year appeared on the Liga.net website. And so some people started saying that this is a direct step toward a political career.
Many of Ukraine's partners, first and foremost America, they constantly say that there is some kind of monopoly on power in Ukraine. President Zelensky shouldn't be in power all the time. So Ukraine is showing we are considering different options.
In this article, Zaluzhny noted that by the end of 2023, the nature of the war had completely changed. Unlike Zaluzhny's previous writings, which were devoted exclusively to military issues, the new one also touches on the topic of politics. In Zaluzhny's opinion, for Ukraine to successfully continue the war, military strategy alone is not enough. A clear political goal is needed, one that will allow us not only to see what the enemy is doing, but also to move forward on our own. What outcome of the war does Ukraine define as victory? Zaluzhny notes that to this day no one knows the answer.
It must be preserved. Our children, our women, our parents must live in peace no matter what it costs us. And
Russia, on the other hand, has an absolutely clear goal, their vision of victory. The elimination of Ukraine as an independent state. Exolovcom writes that relying solely on the supply of weapons from partners is an unreliable plan.
And not even because sooner or later they will run out of such weapons, but primarily because the weapons themselves will change over time and they will no longer be available for our partners.
Zaluzhny not only criticizes the Ukrainian government, but also proposes the same political goal for the country. In his opinion, victory for Ukraine should mean the collapse of the Russian Empire, which poses an existential threat to Ukraine as an independent state. And he suggests that defeat should be considered the complete occupation of Ukraine as a result of its own collapse, since everything else is simply a continuation of the war.
Undoubtedly, among the military, there is a sense that forceful support exists. This is present in Valery Zaluzhny as well.
He insists that Ukraine can only truly be secured by joining NATO, deploying nuclear weapons, or stationing allied military contingents. But Zaluzhny admits that these wishes are unrealistic and therefore the war in one form or another will continue. This raises the question of whether Zaluzhny is planning a political career, because this is being talked about more and more often. For example, this was commented on by diplomat and former Ukrainian ambassador to Belarus, Roman Bezsmертny.
The first and most important thing I want to point out, extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador Valery Zaluzhny has already gone beyond the scale of the Ministry of Defense and the General Staff. In the current situation, I would insist that the new coalition should propose a government. And in fact, his approaches are sufficient for him to lead this government, given his understanding of this developmental genesis. This resource should not be wasted by having him sit in London and just continue writing articles.
Moreover, in regular public opinion polls regarding a potential presidency, Zaluzhny always holds leading positions.
Undoubtedly, Valery Fedorovich has a positive image, but still he lacks experience in managing the civilian sector as opposed to the military, and this could create difficulties. But at this stage, I am not ready to claim that this tradition of power transfer from President Zelensky to let's not call him President Zaluzhny just yet. This model is not considered the main one, but rather as one of the more than possible options.
But while Ukraine was discussing Zaluzhny's possible future, he had already returned to London and was there to meet President Zelensky at the airplane ramp.
Zelensky understands this as well. And of course, he will try to maintain good relations with Zaluzhny. He may even make him offers to integrate into the system of power where President Zelensky is at the head.
It all comes down to one thing, the expert notes. Even if Zaluzhny has political ambitions, it's too early to talk about that for now. After all of this is just speculation at this point. A sensation. Macron demands the freezing of Kremlin assets for Ukraine. The West is putting pressure on Trump, defending Kyiv. The world is uniting against Russia, and there is a catastrophe in the Russian Federation. Sanctions are tearing the economy to pieces. The battle for Ukraine will decide the fate of the continent. Europe continues the fight for Ukraine. Today in Brussels, a decision is being made that seemed impossible just a year ago. The European Union has found a legal loophole that allows it to block Russian assets without the unanimous consent of all member states.
The published text is a complex legal document that tries to resolve two contradictions: to provide money to Ukraine without direct cost to member states and to make decisions without the unanimity currently required. The result is complicated, but it might work.
Essentially, EU countries are trying to get out of a trap they set for themselves at the very start of the full-scale war. All these years, the fate of the frozen Russian assets depended on the mood of one or two states willing to block any decision. Now, however, Brussels is using a mechanism designed for cases of economic shocks. And Russia's war against Ukraine has been officially recognized as just such a shock. Meanwhile, in European capitals, they are already preparing a move that could become the biggest financial blow to Russia so far: the bunker dwellers' nightmare. The European Commission has proposed allocating 210 billion euros in support to Ukraine by 2027. And a significant portion of these funds is supposed to come specifically from frozen Russian assets. 185 billion are held in the Belgian depository Euroclear, with another approximately 25 billion in accounts in other EU countries.
Germany will provide 25% of the support, which is the largest share among all countries. This
is especially important now since it is Belgium, the country where Euroclear is located, that in recent months has been slowing down the process, fearing legal consequences and risks to its own financial system.
Belgium more than anyone else. It is believed that Russia will then try to reclaim these assets through the courts. And in that case, Belgium will need the support of other countries. That is why all the European countries that support Merz's idea are also trying to bring Belgium on board. I think that in the end this will succeed.
And while the fate of Russian assets is being decided in Brussels, European leaders are fighting on another front, a diplomatic one. And its key figures remain the Chancellor of Germany, the President of France, and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It is they, together with the Ukrainian government, who continue to defend Kyiv's interests before the United States. We
all support Ukraine, and we all support peace and peace negotiations to achieve a lasting, durable peace. And I believe that a lot is now in our hands. The funding, the quality of equipment and training for the Ukrainian army, the fact that Ukraine is resisting in this war, as well as the fact that the Russian economy is beginning to suffer, especially after our latest sanctions and those of the United States. And now, in my opinion, the main issue is bringing together our common positions, Europeans, Ukrainians, and the United States, in order to conclude these peace negotiations. And once again, to strengthen trust under the best possible conditions for Ukraine, for Europeans, and for our collective security.
But let's return to the sanctions and their consequences for Russia. Analysts from The Insider have found that the sanctions are literally breaking the chains of Russian weapons production. The country cannot fully carry out complex chemical processing, access to the necessary reagents is closed, and the import of strategic chemicals has plummeted. This has hit the production of rocket fuel especially hard, a critical sector without which modern weaponry is impossible.
For the first time, probably since the start of the full-scale war, there is now, as of September, an official decrease in military production in Russia. Now, the problems that were talked about many years ago are already hitting hard.
But the effect of the sanctions could be even stronger. Yes, the main intelligence directorate is calling for sanctions to be imposed on the entire production chain. After all, right now, 13 out of 49 Russian companies involved in the production of missiles like the Iskander-M are still not under sanctions. A deadly strike force is already on the way. The Czech Republic has unveiled a mega missile for Ukraine. Western weapons are ready to tear the enemy to pieces. A demonstration of deadly power is coming up in the next segment.
A new missile for strikes against the Russian army and the occupiers' military infrastructure. The Czech Republic has unveiled its ultra-modern cruise missile Narwhal, which will be delivered to Ukraine for attacks on the occupiers. The missile with a jet engine was developed by the company LPP for the Czech defense industry. This is a new milestone. In
recent years, the company LPP has focused on developing unmanned aerial vehicles equipped with landing gear, with optical navigation, which allows them to move even when GPS signals are jammed. These drones form the basis for a loitering munition with a flight range of up to 680 kilometers.
The Narwhal has a flight range of up to 700 kilometers, a speed of up to 750 kilometers per hour, and a warhead weighing up to 120 kilograms. The Narwhal cruise missile can be launched in several ways: by catapult from a runway or road using a trolley, as well as with the help of a solid-fuel rocket booster. We
have a real solution. And this is not just a model that says we would like to deal with this. We do not have any critical suppliers. We manufacture everything from airframes to composite materials and autopilots.
The missile is capable of reaching even Moscow and the strategic bomber base. Angles. In addition to standard GPS and probably an inertial system, the Narwhal also has visual navigation, thanks to which it is capable of operating even in the absence of GPS due to the active operation of enemy radar systems. But in order to launch the missile into mass production, test launches must be conducted to verify the missile's effectiveness. Ukraine will serve as the testing ground for the Narwhal, and the targets will be the occupying forces.
When we can say that it works in Ukraine, we will start accepting the first orders. During the first year or two, we would like to produce hundreds of units per year.
The Narwhals are meant to become part of a large unmanned ecosystem. The idea is that the rocket should operate in unstable environments and work in conjunction with other drones.
We will send 10 to 20 of our basic 40-kilogram drones, which will break through the enemy's air defenses. At the same time, 2 Narwhals will quickly fly over them, and above them, a pair of invisibles. As for
Ukraine, according to military analysts, the Narwhal will arrive together with the Czech night ray steel and MTS drones to test the swarm in combat conditions. The first operational deployment of the missiles is scheduled for 2026. We're talking about January or February. The start of serial missile production is planned for March.
Shock. They've challenged Kadyrov to a fight. Fighters of the Free Chechnya. Chechens fighting on Ukraine's side have called Dondon out for a talk in Ukraine. The front is ablaze. Ukrainian heroes are holding the hottest sectors. On the Pokrovsk, Kutin, Zaporizhia, and other fronts, the Ukrainian armed forces remain unbreakable. Most importantly, a new line of defense has been established. Putin's meat grinder of war continues to destroy fresh lives. However, the bunker doesn't want fresh blood. The order has already been signed. Details in the military review.
Watch. A nighttime drone raid in Cheboksary. According to reports, Russians, the local thermal power plant was damaged. Another piece of good news from Ukrainian defenders. On December 5th, SBU drones struck a liquefied gas terminal in the Russian port of Temryuk. As a result of the attack, more than 20 out of 30 available tanks burned down. In addition, railway tank cars were destroyed. Life isn't boring for the residents of Kursk region. People whose homes were destroyed and looted by Putin's army took to the streets to protest the cancellation of payments that compensated displaced persons for renting housing. Fighters of Free Ichkeria who are fighting on the side of Ukraine have challenged Ramzan Kadyrov to a meeting. Whether Kadyrov will come to meet with his fellow countrymen is unclear.
Producer Olya Shore, producer Yulia Rublevska, cameraman Pavlo Pashko, Alexander Rublevsky. Well, while Ramzan is diligently searching for his own unique path forward, the current situation, however, remains quite challenging.
The situation at the front lines of the ongoing Russian-Ukrainian war continues to be exceptionally challenging and fraught with significant difficulties. This precarious situation specifically impacted areas where Ukrainian forces were positioned, for instance in the strategically important settlements of Suki Yahid and Lysivka. These locations faced severe and imminent threats, necessitating immediate and decisive action. Despite these considerable dangers, it was successfully possible to preserve the invaluable personnel, ensuring their safety and well-being. As I have previously emphasized, these dedicated individuals were effectively and systematically evacuated from these extremely perilous and high-risk areas, thereby mitigating potential casualties and maintaining operational integrity. And today, to continue the defensive operation both in the Pokrovsk area and directly in Mirnohrad.
The armed forces of Ukraine are holding back the enemy in the Kupiansk and Huliaipol directions.
All locations are important today, first and foremost because these are key settlements for our logistics. including the Huliay-Pol direction. This is the enemy's opportunity to focus on fire strikes, on fire control over our logistics on the Zaporizhzhia front, over at least several locations accordingly. That is why such attempts at active combat operations by the enemy are taking place today as they try to carry out full-scale offensive actions. But here, the defense forces have so far managed to stop the enemy, have managed, let's say, to create a new line of defense, making use of the local terrain as well. And the enemy's attempts to infiltrate the strongest points are being suppressed as much as possible today.
In the Lyman direction, the enemy has started using heavy armored vehicles. In the Oleksandrivka direction, 2 Ukrainian defenders from the 67th Brigade captured 6 occupiers. Another prisoner from the Dobropilya direction was taken by our soldiers from the 82nd Brigade. The video shows Andriy Kodyakov, who signed a contract with the occupying army because of debts, something he now regrets.
I am deeply disappointed in the Russian armed forces. What is stated in the contract does not match reality. That's why.
Putin plans to replenish the ranks of his army, or more precisely, to make up for losses with new blood. That is why he signed the decree for another round of reservist call-ups, which will take place in Russia as early as 2026.
That's all for now. Watch more breaking news from the front in our next episode. Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.